December of 20. I started in December of 2021 and I don't know if it's every day, but we get calls about fraud from residents of this town almost every day, certainly every week, multiple times a week. And they're all avoidable and they're all kind of fun to talk about. Because raise your hand real quick if you've ever had someone try to defraud you of your money. It should be everyone because everyone does try. If you have any kind of a presence anywhere, then people are going to try to get your money because they don't see it as a victimless crime, but it's a crime they typically never have to answer for because they are overseas or they're far away or whatever. They may never have to deal with the consequences of that, and they often don't. But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways that you can, methods that you can take and steps that you can take to sort of avoid this altogether. This presentation features real cases from here in Anacortes. The first one I'm going to talk about happened this week. So this is stuff that's actually happening. It is not comprehensive at all because there are new scams every day. And I will give you guys a chance on the last slide to raise your hand and talk about whatever you want to talk about in terms of fraud, because it's useful to me. It's useful to talk about it. It's just useful to hear what other people are going through because everyone experiences it and it can be difficult to avoid. I wanted to mention, Trish mentioned the back table. Dan Mall is here with the AARP. He's a volunteer with the Fraud Watch Helpline. He has some handouts back there and you can certainly chat with him afterwards as well. But yeah, let's get started with the presentation. So scams are really easy to avoid. And before we get into actual cases, at first I called them case law, but this is not case law. This is the Supreme Court. This is Anacortes. But scams are really easy to avoid by taking a few steps. But that's not always the case. They're not always that easy to avoid because when we talk about them in briefing every morning, we read through the calls from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. the previous day. We talk about these calls and it's easy to look at them and say, how in the world did that happen to that person? And one thing that you realize is that until you're in that situation, you don't really know what it's like to have someone specifically target you. And I think that's because as people of the world, billions and billions of people, we don't necessarily expect someone to target us, especially someone in another country. Why are they calling me? Well, there are some answers to that. But what I want you to remember is that for a lot of people, this is their job, okay? This is what they do. They do it for a living or possibly under duress. There are people who get kidnapped and put into these call centers, and that's how they make money. So this is not a place to judge them, although there is a certain amount of schadenfreude when they get had or taken or their time wasted. I talk to a lot of people around here who very much enjoy, they know it's a scam, so they take the call and they keep them on the phone for 2 hours if they're bored and then you just hang up the phone, which is cool, but just keep in mind, there is another person on the other end. They're trying to take your money probably, but they pretend to be from a scary, well-known organization. That could be the IRS, the Social Security Administration, the FBI, a variety of really scary things to hear from when you live in America, right? If you hear that someone's from the IRS, how are you supposed to prove it wrong? Well, I'll tell you how you can prove it wrong. People really like to use these big organizations' names because it's scary. You don't want to hear from them. You don't want to hear they're being audited. But typically you won't on the phone. They present a problem you have or a prize you've won. They require action from you. They require you to do things to get your money or to solve the problem. It's usually things that in hindsight look very obvious, but at the end of the day, they are kind of hard to spot when you're in the moment. And a lot of people have experienced that. They put pressure on you to act fast, so they want you to do it really quick. And they leave you without time to consider your actions. Hey, if you want this money, you got to do it now, right? Or hey, if you want to avoid your computer getting a virus or getting compromised, you need to do it now, right? But, consider how many times that a legitimate organization has actually had you do something right away. It's not that. And then they ask you to use unusual methods of payment to get them the money. You'll never have, most scammers aren't gonna tell you, hey, can I have your credit card number? Because that's very traceable, but gift cards, Zelle, Cash App, things like that, they're gonna be very difficult to track that stuff. So they're always, almost always gonna have you use a method of payment that you're probably unfamiliar with. And one thing I've learned in this job is that people may not consider themselves very tech savvy, but when someone tells them to go to a Bitcoin machine and get Bitcoin for a scammer, they suddenly get really, really tech savvy and lose a lot of money. So I'll ask you guys if you have any stories later. Just please remember that this is a judgment-free zone. Like I said, it can be easy to laugh at this stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm just a CSO, I'm not a judge. I'm not gonna sit here and be mean about it, and I don't think we should either. This is a safe space to talk about stuff and to help other people stay sharp. So just remember that. It's these are always fun, even though we're talking about a serious topic, because your money is a serious thing, right? So let's talk about some tactics before we get into actual cases, because if you follow these tactics, you probably won't ever get scammed. Well, like I said, it's very much easier said than done. You guys ever seen the X-Files?
Yeah.
Do you remember that show?
Yeah.
It's a really good show from the 90s. There's one episode that still scares me to this day. I probably shouldn't have watched it, but I walked in when my parents were watching it. And it sticks with me. It scared me really, really bad. Does anybody remember the tagline to the X-Files?
They're out there.
The truth is out there. Does anybody remember the other one? It's on a lot of the posters.
Trust no one.
It's trust no one. Exactly. If I had candy, I would give it to you. So that's a pretty cynical way of looking at scams, but I think it's a little bit better to err on the side of trusting no one than it is to just trust whoever calls you on the phone. And I think people are very trusting, people are very kind, people are understanding. A lot of the stuff comes from pulling at people's heartstrings. People are trying to do the right thing, right? It's not always about, hey, you won money, or hey, you're trying to protect yourself. A lot of the time it's about getting someone else out of hot water, and they will play that up. So don't trust no one, because that's a sad way to go about it, but maybe consider it, because people are very trusting. That's part of your good heart, right? So the baseline here is don't ever provide your personal information to someone who calls you on the phone or emails you, or basically, if you can't prove where that person is from in a very easy manner, then don't give out your information. Ask yourself, are you expecting a contact requesting your personal info? So are you expecting to get a phone call from a company? Or is it a company that you recognize? Maybe you signed up recently and they're calling you. They mostly won't, but just consider if you remember it. One thing that I've gotten in the habit of is if I see a number that I don't recognize, just Google it. So if you're by a computer, you have your phone, just put it in quotation marks and Google it. You'll often come up with a robo-killer website that'll tell you, hey, this is a robocall that's happened 1,000 times in the past 5 minutes according to our users. It's a nice way to do it, but typically you should adopt a policy of not giving out your personal info, but just ask yourself, do I know this person? Am I expecting this contact? And if the answer is no, then just hang up. Is there a way to verify the call or email? And if it's legitimate, can you complete the required action yourself? So let's say you're late on a credit card payment, and your credit card company calls you and says, hey, I need you to pay this, overdue balance. So that may very well be a legitimate call, right? Credit card companies call you, collections agencies will call you, PSC will call you, Cascade Natural Gas, the power company, fiber, they'll call you about your bill. But I typically recommend that people don't pay over the phone. They'll typically not, they won't ask you for your information, but they'll use your stuff on file. But usually I recommend just use the online portal, sign on and do it that way. Because then you're doing it yourself. You can verify that it's true. Because there's nothing stopping someone from saying that they're from PSC or from someplace that you know. So I'm going to use the word verify a lot, because it's an extra step that you can take in almost every situation to verify, right? Either way, don't click on any links. We'll talk about Facebook later, but it happens every day. People you're friends with click on links and then their personal information is suddenly looted and put out there. It's on the dark web. My stuff's on the dark web. I don't know how, but I keep getting told that it's there. So I don't know how that happens, but don't click links from places that you don't recognize. And just make sure that you're able to verify things in your own way, rather than just sort of taking it at face value and click on it, because there's no telling if it's real or not, right? So this is the one thing I want you to take away from tonight. If there's one thing you take away, let it be this: it even bounces and pulses. Legitimate entities are never going to contact you via telephone, email, or text message requesting your personal information, okay? There may be exceptions to that rule. You'll get texts and emails and things from these places. If they're requesting your personal information, I would consider that a scam. That's how I operate in my life. If someone reaches out to you and says, I need your credit card, I need this, I need your name, I need your social security number, I can't tell you it's gonna be a fraud literally 100% of the time, but it probably is, because those are not verifiable ways of contacting you. So people can call you and they can go through the steps to verify who you are on the phone, and they'll do it via the bank and everything. But there's not really any way of knowing who you are. That's why the snail mail is so important, right? It's federally protected. These other ways of speech are not quite as buttoned up, right? So if someone reaches out via those means, just please remember, it's probably a scam. And the question I like people to ask is, what's the worst that could happen? You get a call, a text, or something, we just consider it a scam. I mean, are they gonna take your house? Probably not, right? Yeah,
If I ever get a call and I think suspicious to me, I always tell them, I'm sorry, I can't take this from you, I'll call
Yeah.
my bank and talk to them tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and I never take face on that it's going to be trustworthy. I
Exactly.
call, keep it hour or.
yeah, whoever's calling you,
Yeah.
if you make the contact yourself, even if you call back 1 minute later to a number that you know,
Yeah,
you look up the number and you call, because they can make numbers look like a different number, they can spoof them.
yeah,
You can call that number back, and it's scary what they can do these days, but it's important to just make sure that you're not taking that stuff at face value, because like I said, even if it is real, they're gonna make you think it needs to be done right this second. And that's never true. Right? It's just, it isn't. More pulses. And this is a really big one, and it is a frustrating thing to read about. We read about it almost every week. There's different scams. Many of them involve gift cards. Legitimate entities will never ask you to pay using cryptocurrency or wire transfers or payment apps or gift cards. Now, payment apps can include PayPal, that's legitimate, but they'll never require it. There's a variety of ways to pay, and one of my theories is that I think when people get calls requesting gift cards, I think a lot of people consider themselves not very tech savvy, so the first thing you think is, well, I guess maybe that's how people do things now. So you head to Target, you buy a bunch of Apple or Target or whatever, Amazon gift cards, Visa cards, and you read them the numbers, and it's essentially a way of laundering money. There's no way to recover that stuff once you give it to a gift card and give the card number to somebody else. And legitimate entities are never gonna ask you to pay that way. That I can tell you is a blanket statement. They will not. So if anyone mentions gift cards to you, I would consider that a scam and hang up or stop the contact. But like I said, I can't count the number of times I've had people who drive to Target on the phone with the scammer, buy gift cards, go back, read it to them, and then something in the hours after that tips them off. Oh, maybe that wasn't legitimate. So my hope is that people in this town and everywhere can maybe consider that before they give all that money away. Because it's not typically recoverable when you put it into a gift card and give that number to somebody else. So there is more, obviously. Legitimate entities will never require you to act immediately. This is directly from the FTC. Honest businesses will give you time to make a decision. Anyone who pressures you to pay or give them your personal information is a scammer. It's never gonna be as time sensitive as they say. By not giving you time to make a decision, they are essentially cutting out that time you would take to make a smart decision, and you are giving away your money, and then it's gone. And most people are smarter than that. Most people will realize it, and they do realize it. They call us after they realize it themselves. The person doesn't call back and say, haha, scammed you. They realize it later, right? Because they think, well, maybe that wasn't legit. And they're almost always right. So this is one that I also got from the FTC, and it's not one that I put in my presentations before because it's so simple, but if you feel the urge to give your money and or personal information to a stranger, as a lot of people do for various reasons that are often unthinkable, just call someone that you trust. Call a friend, call a family member, call your son, your daughter, your brother, your mom, your dad. Say, hey, I got this phone call. Here's what it says. Most of them are going to tell you it's not real, it's a scam. We all want to win the Publishers Clearinghouse prize, right? With the big check and the van, and the people come to your house and you're a millionaire. But typically, unless they actually show up and that's where they're from, and you entered it yourself, that's not going to be the case. So talk to somebody. Call me. I have a bunch of my business cards and all have that. Just give me a call if you want. I'm at the office 5 days a week. I'd love to chat with you and tell you to not give your money.
For $5,
Yeah, you know, a little under the table. So let's talk about cases. So again, there's a chance that I've had this happen before at the senior center. I'll talk about a case and someone in the room will have that case be related to them. I never mention any names or really give away any real identifying information, but people recognize it when it happened to them. And again, this is not to judge anyone here. This is not to be mean. This is just to try to sharpen everyone else. If it sounds sarcastic, it's because that's funnier, but I mean it in a sarcastic way against the people who it happens to, because it's serious. It's a lot of money. And when people are retired, I mean, any time of your life, when people are retired, especially, you're losing all this money and you can't get it back. And then it's like, well, what do I live on for the rest of my life, right? So think of it that way. But, and again, this is all stuff that's happened here in town since 2021 or so when I started. So this one's called, oh no, it's the FTC. The reporting party reports that a man called him from the Federal Trade Commission. That's a scary place, right? And told him that 4 bank accounts had been opened in his name. According to the caller, the reporting party would need to provide his bank information and financial management accounts. So this happened on the 13th. This was a this week call, right? All of his money, or almost all of his money, is tied up in those financial management accounts, a little bit in his bank account. This is a fraud. This person lost $30,000 of his money this week to this scammer. And again, he realized it himself and called us, because no one's going to tell you it's a scam, but most people are going to be smart enough to realize, oh, it's all gone. And now that person is ghosted me. They don't always ghost you either. All the time they try to call back and get more money. But hopefully we can make sure it doesn't get that far. This is a sad one because, like I said, we all want to win the PCH check, right? The reporting party received a call from someone claiming to be from Publishers Clearinghouse. The reporting party won a cash prize. They just need $5,000 of your money to unlock that prize. Or you can hold your money so they can get you your prize, right? That's how that's how it always works. So people, and this is another one that can continue to recur. You'll give them your money and then they'll call back and say, oh, we're having trouble verifying who you are. Can you please send this information and maybe a little bit more money so that we can fund the verification process? And like I said, people continue with it, and people sort of go down this rabbit hole, and eventually you're tied up in all kinds of fraud and the money's not recoverable because it's overseas or otherwise. And it's sad because everybody wants to win money, you know? And you should also consider in any sweepstakes type thing, if someone calls and says he won, I always assumed as a kid, when you see those commercials of the van driving up and giving people big checks, I always assumed that they were just picking out of the phone book because, you know, the people are always so surprised, but make sure you entered the competition that you're winning for. You have to enter to win. They don't just have like a ledger of everyone's ever lived, and as nice as that would be, we don't have it. Even the state lottery, you gotta play to win. A confusing computer virus. So tech support scams are huge, and I believe that they're huge because nobody knows anything about the tech that's around today. It's very opaque and difficult to discern. Who's to say it's the person from Microsoft isn't telling the truth, right? I don't know anything about computer viruses. I just know that I've had them before and they're a pain to get rid of, right? So the reporting party received a call from Microsoft tech support. I don't even think they said Microsoft tech support, and the call just said, hey, this is Microsoft. So Microsoft, the company, is calling you, informing them their computer has a virus and is compromised. Tech support just needs remote access to the reporting party's computer in order to remedy the problem. So remote access is another big one. I provide remote access to my work computer all the time. It's just to our IT department, so they can fix things. I can verify that I called them. It's through our city phone system, but remote access is a really powerful thing because once they get access to it, they can throw tools on there and they can access anything that's on there. That could include your bank information, that could include anything tied up with the programs you have installed, that can include your password database, which most of us have nowadays. Remote access is a big deal and they will request it and a lot of people grant them access and then literally everything that's ever been on your computer is available. It's at their fingertips. So just remember that maybe Microsoft has a way of checking what's on your computer, but if someone calls and says this is on your computer right now, it's probably a scam because they're not promoting your computer and detecting a virus for you. So this happened last year. It's called the grandparent scam. Timmy's in trouble. The reporting party received a call from an unknown person claiming that the reporting party's grandson has been taken captive in Costa Rica. They need a large sum of ransom money to make the situation go away and get their grandson home safely. So this one surprised me because it's as simple as calling Timmy, right? Say, hey, are you in Costa Rica? Are you in a gulag somewhere?
Yeah.
And he probably says no. Or call his parents, call someone, just verify it. Call and say, hey, because I can't tell you with 100% certainty that Timmy's not locked up in Costa Rica, right? But I can tell you with 99.9% certainty that he's probably not. And one example I like to use to show how sophisticated scams are getting is this looks pretty obvious to detect, right? I mean, it's someone's pretty obvious to get around anyway. But the example I like to use is what if your grandson has visited Costa Rica this year? Or what if he's in Costa Rica right now? What if the message comes from his phone or a number that looks like his phone? What if the voice on the other end sounds just like him, right? That doesn't happen very often, but AI is getting crazy. So we might just be not very far away from that kind of thing happening on the regular. So those aren't necessarily common things, but you never know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they can really play you on that because I know someone who got a call about that
Mhm.
in a car accident down in Las Vegas while sitting on Brent.
Yep.
And when.
Speak up a little.
Oh, okay.
People can hear what you're saying.
So I know someone who had a scam like that happen to them. I think they learned a lot from Facebook. They
Yeah.
told Facebook and found out a lot about this individual's family. Because what they ended up doing was calling and saying, this is, the a lawyer or something, calling, your grandson is in jail. He was in a car accident. He hit a woman's car. She's in the hospital. They're not gonna, not gonna charge him with anything, but, he needs bail money. $2,000.
Yep.
And the $2,000 was to be sent in a way, that was not what you would think, like gift cards or
Yep.
sent somewhere. Turns out that they talked to the grandson, who apparently got a broken nose during the accident. And so it didn't sound exactly like.
How can we?
Yeah. And the so-called grandson knew a lot about the family and said, please don't tell dad, he had a heart attack recently, and I don't want to stress on him, please, grandpa, don't go. He did have a heart attack, so he must have learned a lot about this,
Like you don't expect the targeting, right?
yeah.
One story I told at work recently is I was a senior in college and I got a letter in the mail that was, it had a note that said, do you know the meaning of life? And it had a bunch of white powder in it. It was in my apartment senior year, and, I don't know why, but I looked at the letter and I was like, oh my, who would, I know it was, probably wasn't on anthrax or whatever, but I was like, who would do this? Like, what is happening? And I looked at it and I was like, I like put it on the ground and walked away. And I went into my apartment and I talked to my roommate, John, and I was like, I just got a letter that had like powder in it. And the return address was Telegraph Road in Bellingham, which I lived on Telegraph Road in Sumas for a couple years growing up, but that was enough to make me think, oh my God, somebody knows me, right? And my roommate, John, looked at me, he goes, yeah, it's Mike. So it's April Fool's Day, my other roommate, was like, which I knew, like, I know that. And he did things like that, and I knew it was April Fool's Day, and I should have expected it, I was on high alert, but not high alert enough. It's a little bit of information, it was the Burger King in Bellingham that he had looked up, it happened to share a road name with a house I grew up in. So, that's not a scam, but that is an example of how a little connection can make you maybe believe it a little bit more.
Yeah, but they actually,
Yeah,
they actually sent the money.
Yeah.
And then they called them back and said, well, now it's gotten more complicated. The
Yeah.
woman was pregnant and the baby died, and now the husband wants to, do charges against your grandson. So we need more money. Well, luckily, that's when, he didn't call me and tell anybody about this. My first thought was you should not have sent the money. You should have called and found out.
Takes a phone call, right? Hey,
Why don't you call and see if your grandson is home?
Yep. but people get rolled up in it.
It's the thing's emotions.
Yep.
So I take calls as a volunteer from AARP, they've got a fraud watch that where people have been scammed, call in, and then we return the calls and try to help them unwind it. But in this particular case,
Yeah,
I told you guys the story already.
yeah.
I talked to a fellow the other day who had gotten the grandparents scam, it was exactly what you talked about.
Yeah.
He was drunk, he had an accident, hit a woman, she was pregnant, the
Yes.
whole nine yards. He had known that this was a scam. And so he was stringing them along, all the way on, just, long as he could. He got to the end of it and they said, yeah, we need $5,000 in bail and this and that, whatever. He said, that kid's been a real pain in the
I love it because that scammer is gonna go home to his family and they're gonna be like, hey, I was scamming today. But it happens, and don't think that, like, I feel like a lot of us think like the world is the reverse Truman Show, where it's like, we're one of this many billion people, why is someone from overseas or wherever it is? Keep saying overseas, it can happen anywhere, but why is someone gonna call me specifically and have researched me? And go through my Facebook and look at stuff, we'll talk about Facebook later, there's lots to talk about on Facebook. Yeah, just call somebody, call and ask, call Timmy's mom or anybody, go to his house before you send them all your money. So this is one, there's a YouTuber that I really like, he does, he puts on a wig for his, like a woman's wig, and he changes his voice to sound, like he's a little older than he is, and he takes scammers on these rides for like days at a time, and then end up exploiting their information. But this is the scam that he sees very frequently, which is the reporting party receives a call from a man claiming that the reporting party is due to receive a refund from Norton Antivirus. I don't know why, but they use Norton a lot, and I think it's because it seems reputable because it's supposed to prevent scams. They just need to access the reporting party's bank account to transfer the money. So they give you access to the bank account. Remote access to his computer will do just fine, right? But if you're taking your money out and putting it into your bank account, that's crazy. You can tell where it's going. So what they'll do is they'll throw a large sum of money in there. It'll appear in your bank account. It'll look like you have, it'll say, oh, you need $1,000 refund. And then you'll have $100,000 in your bank account. And they'll say, I accidentally added some zeros to that number, oh my gosh. And then they're gonna start tugging at your heartstrings. They're gonna say, I'm gonna be charged this money, my family's gonna be out this much money, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna get fired because I gave you this money. Well, as far as the people are concerned, they have the money now, right? in reality, that's just a collectible float that's gonna disappear from your account in a day, right? So it's like, it's as though you cashed a bad check. So then the person's gonna head to Target, because they're gonna need gift cards, you're gonna get as many gift cards as you need to cover that purchase, read it to them. Yeah,
Question,
go for it.
if I find that I have an extra $100,000 in my bank account, can I go spend it real quick?
I would recommend you don't. People get prosecuted for that stuff, because the bank does accidentally deposit money, actual money in people's accounts sometimes. It's harder in the digital age, but it's happened. And you can't just go spend it, because they're gonna come after it at some point, especially if it's a large sum. But in this case, they didn't really deposit it, it's just, you know, it's invisible money, it'll just go away. So all those gift cards you got, that is just taking away from that giant sum they gave you, well, then you're gonna be in the hole that much, because that's not in your available balance anymore. So just remember, remote access is a bad thing, and gift cards are bad. Typically, if someone calls and says you do receive a large sum of money, I would be very skeptical of that anytime. I would love to receive a large sum of money, but that's pretty unusual. Money's hard to come by, so be skeptical. Yeah,
What would the scammer do if he said, "Oh, just send me a check for my refund"?
oh, he would do everything in his power to convince you to, I mean, he wouldn't give you a refund, because the check is,
Well, I know, but it was sort of fun.
I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, I would probably just hang up the phone, but if you want to try to get him to say, well, I prefer that as a check, please, or something. And most legitimate businesses, if you were to do a refund, they'd probably send you a check if you really wanted to. Or put it on your card that you used to buy it.
So what's really amazing is, and there's YouTube videos and stuff that people see. If they got remote access to your computer and you access your bank account so that you can do this refund and they can actually manipulate the HTML, the code, so that what you think you're seeing as your bank account will show an extra $10,000 deposit. And you will be convinced this is your bank account, you are looking at it, you logged in online, and yes, that money is there. It's, very convincing.
And that's pretty easy for a lot of these people to do. Like I said, it takes a little bit of research, a little bit of extra information, and they can do it.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
say this happened to you, what recourse? Do you go directly to the bank and say, how did this money come in? Or
So-
and-
What I would do, so I've heard of the collectible float thing, you also get the thing where it's not even in your bank account, it just looks like it is on your computer, because they have remote access and they can make it look like that. It does happen where sometimes they'll send you a check, and then they'll cash the check and you don't get it of it, and there's various ways to scam people. If they receive a check, they'll ask you for money back or something, but it's not a real check, it's like a bounce, so it's not really your money. You can always call the bank and ask about a transaction, and they can follow.
They'll tell you it's not
Yeah,
there.
they'll tell you it's not real, but they have a lot more information than you do when you click on your stuff on your bank, so.
Oh, and then we call you.
Yeah, and I always tell people, if you have a scam to report, there's no harm. I mean, I'll talk about IC3.gov later. That's how you report it to the feds. But calling your local PD, if anything, will give you a case number. That's a really powerful thing to have, because if there is a way to get your money back, the bank's probably gonna ask that if you reported it to your local police department. And then you'll be able to say, yeah, here's the case number. And they can call us and say, yeah, we looked at it, and that's just how they verify that you actually lost money, right? It's just another tool in your tool belt, but I recommend always calling. People like to call now. Having seen my presentation, they'll call if they had a scam attempted on it and lose any money. We have a section in our stats for no loss fraud. We just report it. So it's a legitimate call. I recommend you do it. And so scams don't just happen to older people. I think that's a common misconception. But dating apps are a big deal. They have been for a long time. They're bigger than ever. There's a few new ones out there. Tinder, etc. So the reporting party has been chatting online with a young woman for a while now, and the woman is now claiming she will send explicit photos of the reporting party to his grandmother if he doesn't need a large sum of money. So these could be explicit photos that this person provided to the person, or those could be explicit photos using just the person's face because they got it from Facebook or from just like a nice little selfie that they sent. If you're a middle schooler, it doesn't really matter a ton because those photos exist. And I don't actually know how often they really get sent to people. I think that's typically an empty threat, but it does happen. And I know it's the norm now, but I recommend that people be very, very careful when you're chatting anonymously with people online when they start asking you for things. Because people can be very nice in real situations. They can also be very nice when they think they can get money out of you. And a lot of the time, these chats continue after these threats are made because you make a connection with someone and these people are very good at talking to you. So I recommend not sending nude photos of yourself to anybody, but I also recommend not sending any photos or providing any information because it's amazing what people can do these days with AI and just with photo software in general. They can make it look like a lot of things. This happens pretty often. That happens here in town. So be careful of dating apps, of chatting. Anything that requires anonymity is probably going to have some people on it who are trying to take your money. So this one is sad and really, really tricky because it often involves a real Zoom interview with the person who is real. The reporting party interviewed for a remote job on Zoom and got the job, which is great. Her employer requests her bank account and personal information to order a new laptop so she can get it sent to her so she can do her job. So she gives them the information, no laptop comes. I mean, I think we had, I don't know if it was ours or not, but people fill out W-2s, they have an interview with someone with a face. It seems very real, and then it just ends up being not real because now you provide your bank account and routing number to these people. It is sometimes traceable, sometimes not, but it's just a way to get your info and a way to get remote access to your stuff often. They'll always find a way to do that. So just be careful, try to verify, ask who people are before you just assume that it's the hiring manager for some big 500 place. Just be careful, verify, okay? I think there's someone trying to get outside, but maybe not. So this is one of the first things that I dealt with as a CSO, one of the earliest cases. So the reporting party is expecting a debit card in the mail for an account that has $10,000 in it. So they put $10,000 from their bank account into this account. And the debit card never arrives and they choose to wait a few days because sometimes the mail takes longer than expected, right? We don't always get things on time. And the reporting party checks the account and finds that it has no money in it. So in this particular case, the card was delivered, put in the person's mailbox, and someone stole it from the mailbox. And then when he used it. So it sucks, it's horrible, but in this case, the person who stole the card, he went to a store over in Burlington and used his Gmail address to get his points for the store. So that's a nice outcome because the guy was like, "Hey, here's who I am," and here's a stolen card. But this can happen physically too. It's not just through online trickery. People can come just take your card and call it and authorize it. We've all activated debit cards before, right? You call the number, it's automated, you have some stuff, and you're good. So most stores don't ID you. You have a PIN. You can go use it. So that's 10K out the window. And I recommend USPS, I think it's called Daily Informed Digest, or Informed Delivery. You get your daily digest every day. You can see a scan of everything you're getting in the mail. And we have a PO box, which I really love. That does not stop the post office from delivering it to their own PO box. So you can certainly have a way to check it, but we got back from Yellowstone last year and I went to get our mail and they handed me this gigantic stack of mail. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting any of this. And I got in the car and it was like 2 other post office boxes with the mail. People's primary ballots were in there. So I walked back in and I was like, none of this is ours. Like, one thing was ours. But I knew that it wasn't ours ahead of time because I looked at the digest, but I was like, maybe I missed something. So it's nice to have a little extra tool in your tool belt, so keep an eye on it, monitor it. Locking mailboxes are also a thing. You can get a locking mailbox that they have to unlock to put your mail in. And yeah, it's just a nice extra little layer of security, because if you think about it, our mail is federally protected. Mail theft is a pretty major crime in this country, but that still doesn't stop someone from going out and opening the mailbox and grabbing it. I mean, it's just out there. So,
Well, how did the mailman open up all the mailboxes then?
No, you have the master key.
you have the key, they have a slot to put it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I got it.
There's a slot, they put it in, and then you got a key to open it.
Yeah.
Our neighborhood all went to the locking mailboxes after there were a few incidents.
We find cash in the mail sometimes. You'll find someone, dropped a bunch somewhere and then it's just an entire neighborhood's worth of, hospital and stuff. Late on your car bill? So the reporting party receives a call from a number that belongs to Puget Sound Energy. The caller states that they are late on their energy payment and provides them with some bill assistance and aid programs, and offers to take care of the bill over the phone using the already provided account information, which is attached to the reporting party's online account. So, is this a scam?
Possibly.
Could be, right? This isn't a scam, because they will call you and they will say you're late and they will offer to use the stuff that's already there, right? I use this example because people have talked to me about this before at these talks. They mentioned, oh, I got a call from PSC saying I'm late on my bill. Is it real? And I'll always tell them, are you late on your bill? Maybe it could be real, but it could be the most legit call in the world. You can verify everything. I would still recommend just finding it yourself, right? Get an online account. There are some people out there who are very resistant to online accounts for their banks and everything else. People still like to pay by check sometimes. And sometimes we all wish we could go back to those times. It's a little simpler, but the world is built around these secure forms of payments and of access. You can access your bank accounts at any point, right? So I recommend just doing it yourself. Just say, thank you, I'll take care of it myself. They're not gonna need to pay right away. There's not a person standing there with the scissors ready to cut your power off and you don't pay it. And if there is, acknowledge it. How many of you have seen something that looks like this on the old Facebook? Yeah. So I see these a lot, and usually it has 50 people, but one of them is your friend. So you'll see your friend's name attached to something like this, and you'll think, oh my gosh, so-and-so's dead. Sometimes there'll be a crash video attached to it, but it gets people to click. And that's a really good way to basically give people access to your Facebook account. So don't click links like this. Like I said, there's not 100% chance that it's fake, but I see these almost every day on my own page.
You can always call and ask somebody.
Yeah, you can message them. You can open the messages app and say, hey, are you dead? And we'll probably say, no, I'm not. I may do an entire talk about Facebook at some point. Because it's the most popular one. Most people have a Facebook. And you would be surprised how often we will get someone who, is in one of our cases, and you pull them up and you just search their Facebook page, and the privacy settings are at 0. Everything is visible. Everything I've ever done, their birth date's there. I find people's phone numbers on Facebook sometimes. I'm not even friends with them. It's just fully public, right? So I recommend just keep making your account invisible to everyone but your friends. That's a problem if you want to get discovered by people from way back in the day. But I've gotten to a point personally where someone friends me on Facebook. That could be someone I know. I'll always look at it and say, yeah, I don't believe you. It's probably not a real account. I get a lot of friend requests from people I'm already friends with. That's a nice red flag, because it's probably someone spoofing their account and just reading their friends because their friends list is public. It happens to everyone. And it's very easy to button up those privacy settings. But we don't always think to do it. So these are some preventative measures that I like to go through. This is a little scattershot, it's a little random, but it's a number of things that you can do to just make sure the stuff never happens to you. So go into your browser, there should be a pop-up blocking option. A lot of scams happen through pop-ups on your computer. They'll look legitimate, they'll look like a window from Windows. And it's not, it'll lead you to a link. Clicking links is bad, I remember, but I've had it happen before where they appear where I'm about to click, and I accidentally click on it. So block pop-ups. If you're, some websites require pop-ups, banks do sometimes, but there will be an option to allow those, and you'll know where they're coming from, because you know the website that you went to, right? But block them, because they're often bad, not always. Block them once it calls and text messages. I can show you how to do this on your phones. It's very easy to do. Usually it's in the contacts, scroll down on the iPhone, it's in red, just say block this caller. My list of blocked callers is very long and often includes legitimate people, but you know. Sometimes it gets annoying, right? So.
So if it is a legitimate person,
Mhm.
is there a means by which you can unblock that particular
It's
person?
in the same place, you just say unblock, so if they reach out to you by any means, you can just unblock it. Like I said, you know, I always tell people that if someone really needs to get a hold of you and they're not blocked, they can always leave a voicemail if you have your mailbox set up. A lot of people don't have their mailboxes set up or their mailboxes are full. I love having an empty voicemail box, but people just can't think of it. Get on the do not call registry. This is more for sanity's sake. So do not call registry is usually used by like innocent telemarketers. So that's just to save yourself a little bit of a headache. Scammers are not going to go on the do not call list and say, oh, I hacked the do not call list. I can't call these people. But it's a nice way to save yourself a little bit of a headache. Don't click links or open email attachments before carefully considering them. So this isn't, we often get attachments from the city, like from IT or from anywhere in the city via a city email address, and they get your hackles up a little bit because they're often trying to trick you to see if you're going to click on the phishing link. And then if you do click on it, you get a training that says, hey, you clicked this, you need to go through a 10-minute training about why you shouldn't have clicked it.
I have fallen for that one time.
I have to.
Yeah.
Me too. Because
I went to. school.
in my
I
experience,
feel
the
like
city
the only
emails
thing
are
I
a
was
little
like,
trickier.
nah.
Because a lot of the scam emails that we all get, I don't know why it is, but they'll have different fonts, and I think it's to avoid the spam blockers that most of our emails have, but. You know, when you send out a million of them, someone's gonna click on it probably, right? All you need is one. Get online access to your bank accounts, you can check it anytime. I've heard the tip given that you should balance your checkbook once a month. You can do that, but I would recommend checking it more often than that. Like I said, people like to not. People like to avoid doing that because it's an internet thing, right? You feel like you're opening yourself up to scams, you feel like you're opening yourself up to access, but your bank account is built to have that access. That's part of how you access it, so. If you're following all the other steps, it shouldn't be a problem. It's just another tool for you to use.
Why do you say to check, often then? Is that what you said? Go on access.
Just sign into your bank account. Make sure as often as you, I mean,
Yeah,
make sure the balance is what you think it is. It's,
oh, I see.
you know, just make sure you didn't have $300 worth of fraudulent, you know,
Okay.
or maybe it's legit. Maybe you paid for Paramount Plus and you haven't watched Paramount Plus in 2 years. You know, check that. There's all kinds of ways that you can, you know, it happens. Yeah.
Some of the financial institutions, and credit card will allow you to get an email or a notification for transactions. We have our credit card, for example, set up so that if there's a transaction over $500, or it gets an email. And many financial institutions will provide you with notifications of transactions so that you can keep, you know, real-time awareness of what's going on.
That's nice. If they offer it, I think it's a good idea to use it. You know, you can access it anytime, simply on your phone. Yeah.
I had that company, I got a call, or I got a text saying that from the fraud department before my bank saying that they were wondering what their IDs paid $1.
Yeah.
To da 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 da, and please call, and this is your case number. And I thought, well, I'm not very trustworthy of anything like that, so I went on the back of my credit card to see what number was there. I called that number, called between their business hours, so then I got on my, it was a Sunday. So then I got my bank statement out and the number back, and then, well, it was a Sunday. So I called telling myself I was not gonna give them any information other than the case number. And it sounded like it was somebody from another country.
Which it often will be.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I basically told the person who was having a hard time understanding that I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to call my bank tomorrow. And so I did. So I did find out that there was a legitimate, but a lot of times people are sending their business out of our country. When I have to call about canceling and rescheduling an eye appointment, I figure a chicken and a rooster while the woman was setting up my eye appointment. And so I just have this really, all these warning signs, sometimes I'm going, well, I just don't trust these.
And I understand that, but typically, if it's a number that you call, you can look at your bank statement next to your phone and say, I called this number.
Yeah.
I mean, people work from home, people do tech support jobs from home. I've had people ask me before, like, hey, can you listen to like an accent, like a foreign accent? Isn't that okay? Scam? And I always say, you could, I guess, but a lot of call centers are operated out of foreign countries. And I don't want you to think that if you hear someone with an American accent over the phone, then that's legit.
Yeah.
Because people scam here too, so. Yeah, I mean, if you initiate the contact, there's a far less chance that it's gonna be a fraud. If you're calling a number that you dialed yourself and it's on a legitimate document, you know, those little things may, like I said, raise your hackles and sort of make you think twice about it, but
It's good that you're thinking.
if you're, yeah, it's good that you're thinking about it. If you initiate the contact, it's a much safer way of doing it rather than picking up the phone, because spoofing numbers is really, really easy. I don't really understand how it's done. When I read about it, I think, why isn't Apple figured this out yet? Why is someone calling that says it's from somewhere and it's not? But that's happening. Check the URLs before you click on them. So I always recommend right clicking or control clicking on Mac instead of clicking. Be careful when you do that, so you don't accidentally click it. And there should be a menu where you can properties or something, and that will tell you the actual website that it's taking you to. Its hyperlinks aren't always accurate. Oh yeah, you can also hover over it and kind of see where it is going to take you. So check the links first, because that's not a foolproof way of doing it. They can make links look different, but or the link could be one letter off from where you're actually trying to go. But a lot of the time, it will be some long gibberishy list of letters that are certainly not where you're trying to go. And it'll be some dummy site that's going to try to take your info. So just verify the link before you check it, right click it, hover over it. There's a lot of different things you can do that aren't clicking it to make sure before. Be careful on social media, button up your privacy settings. We talked about this. Social media is a really easy place to get scammed. I recommend putting your privacy settings at their highest. I can help you with that. If you ever call me, if I'm working with PD, I can help you with your privacy settings. It's very easy to do. It'll make you very difficult to find, but that's kind of a good thing this day and age. I liked Facebook back in the day. I started Facebook in 2005, right after it was being finished called the Facebook. It was just Facebook. And it was cool to be found by my friends because it was just college kids. It was people who'd gone off to different colleges, and that was what it was for. And 4 years later, everyone I knew was on it. My great grandmother was on it, sending me requests for Farm Bill and everything else. And as I always say, the dream was dead, because then everyone was there. It wasn't really about connecting anymore. It was about advertising and apps and, you know. Yeah.
So we get calls periodically from people whose Facebook account has been hacked. And you know, what they need to do to get back at it. If you Google Facebook and look for a phone number to call Facebook, Facebook does not have a phone number that you can call and talk to a live person. If you call the number that Google gives you for Facebook, you will get a scam. They do have a Facebook number, but it basically says go to their website and you cannot talk to a live person. But if you Google it, you can find a live person, that you're on the wrong path.
And Facebook, like I said, I will probably develop an entire talk about Facebook because it is something that most of us in this room probably have. It's where a lot of our scams originate, unfortunately. And it's hard to tell sometimes what person that I know, her account got duplicated. So her account got hacked, so she made a new account. And she can't get Facebook to delete the old account that's been taken over. Because Facebook is like, well, we can't verify that it's fake. And she's like, well, I'm the person. And it would be so easy, right, to verify that. They can, but they won't do it. So that account's still there. Selling, I think last time I saw it was selling fake Britney Spears tickets. And Facebook's like, yeah, sorry. It might actually be you. And so I always make the case, I haven't deleted my Facebook, so I cannot tell you to delete your Facebook. But you may delete your Facebook.
How do you get off of Facebook once you're on?
So there is an option to delete your account. You can go into the back end. I can show you how to do it. There's a setting in there where you can go down and we'll delete your account. And there are ways to do it where my friend got off Facebook for like 4 years. He got back on it when his daughter was born, so he could share photos with his family. But he deleted it to where it sort of saves your info so that if you want to reactivate your account, you can. You can also just wipe it clean from the face of the earth.
Okay, call me in.
Every so often you'll see someone who was tagged in a photo back or who tagged their photos back in the day. And the links won't be live anymore because that person probably deleted their Facebook. So it is possible to do. I haven't done it. I like having my Facebook for a variety of reasons. I have nieces and a nephew that I like to see photos of. It's nice to be able to check our police department posts from a personal account, see how they look from a public facing account, etc. There are reasons, but it's a really easy way to get scammed, basically. And they make it easy to do it. And then we talked about informed delivery. Consider that. My wife and I talk about it a lot, where it's kind of a bummer to ruin the surprise, but it's nice to know what mail you're getting. And even if you don't check it every day, if you're expecting some mail, you can check and see if it was scanned. And then maybe they put it in the wrong, because the scanner detects it. That does not mean that the person takes it with their hands into the right place. It doesn't happen that often, but every so often it's usually like the $400 thing that I ordered, and I'm like, where's that thing? And they're like, oh, it's just in the back corner here. So what happens if you get scammed? This happens a lot. People get scammed. It's not always what I would consider their fault. It's very easy to have happen. So don't do nothing. I think the level of unreported scams in our country is kind of astronomical. I think a lot of people get scammed. They feel embarrassed and ashamed that it happened to them. Like I said, it's a judgment-free zone, and when you call and report this stuff, that is at least one small amount of recourse that you can maybe use in the future to maybe get some of your money back. There's no guarantee, especially with things like gift cards, but a lot of the time there is a recourse. You can work with your bank. It's difficult sometimes, especially when it's out of state stuff, but if you call and report it, that's your first step. So don't just do nothing. That's kind of like letting them win, but more importantly, your life's affected. I wish life wasn't tied so much to money, but it is. They don't deserve it. So the steps you should take is call 911, tell dispatch what happened. So you can report the scam and potential loss of money to the police department in the jurisdiction where the loss occurred. So if you're living in Anacortes and it happened, they're not going to send it to the, we don't know what the call center is, so they're going to send it to us. So tell them, hey, this is what happened. They will send it to us. An officer will take your report. Maybe they'll come in the lobby, but we'll take your report, document it, get you a case number, then you'll have that case number to give to your bank or your financial institution, and they'll be able to help you hopefully recoup some or all of the loss. It does happen. Especially when it's something legitimate means. Gift cards are another story, but like I said, don't buy gift cards for people unless it's your kids or something. Officers will help you with next steps. They'll probably have you close your accounts and open new ones with different numbers. You're gonna have to wipe everything clean. Any information that they gave, you may bring your computer down to CompuMatter to get it wiped of all the stuff that you maybe got installed onto it. Malware is a big thing. I could do a whole talk about that. I had my computer affected with malware before. It sucks. It's just in the background. You can't always tell it's there, but it's always working and it's always trying to take stuff. But. And that's a big one, IC3.gov, that's the federal reporting website, that's another step they're gonna want you to take, is report it to that website. And they'll go into the database, things that happened related to fraud. So. But your first step should be to call, yeah.
Is that database something that I can look at? Like if I think something is a scam, can I look it up on there and see if other people have been?
I'm not sure if it's like a registry that you can look up, but the FTC and IC3.gov have articles that you can read about it. I don't know if you
Of
can look
similar,
at specific people's cases because of privacy concerns, but
Sure.
I had to go on the IC3 the other day, and it was very difficult to work through to where I could get to reporting, so I finally got out of them and just went to the FTC, which was a much easier route to report.
I use the FTC for a lot of this presentation. I don't know why, it's just a bit more user friendly to go through. It's unfortunate that IC3.gov is more difficult to use because that is where we send everyone who's been scammed, but if you ever need help, that's part of my job, is helping people with that kind of stuff. I'm the crime prevention officer, so if you ever need help getting through it, I'm willing to work through it over the phone or in person. I got a computer in my office, we can do it together, so please give me a call, because I don't want you to be hanging out to dry with this stuff. Especially when it's the government that's making it hard, right? So that's one word that I'm glad I didn't spell wrong. Again, if you get a call from someone requesting your information or your money or access to your computer or anything in between, you may think it's real, you may think it's fake, you may think it's iffy, right? Just take an extra step and call somebody. We were talking earlier about the grandparents scam. It's so easy to be fooled by it, but it's also so easy to just work around it. And not losing all your money is a lot nicer than losing all your money, right? And you can almost, it's so easy to avoid, but like I said before, these people are really good at what they do. They're really good at using this. This stuff is down to a science at this point. I mean, they have scripts that they can read for all these different situations. I haven't seen them myself, but it's very sophisticated.
There's somewhere on YouTube, there's this one that I knew about, where he actually sits with these people and kind of reverses it.
Yeah.
He sits there like he's the grandma
Mhm.
and he
Yeah.
works this person, you know. I'm not sure where I need to class, you know.
Exactly.
And then eventually he kind of gets into their computer and we can see them and they're all like, oh my God.
And they end up just swearing a whole bunch at the end because they spent 2 days of their time. That was it's called, his name is Kit Thorga, I mentioned him earlier. There's also Jim Browning, that's not his real name, but he worked with this YouTuber named Mark Rober, who worked on, he worked on the Mars, one of the Mars rovers. He did a thing where they were able to get sophisticated enough where they had people on the ground in India going up and finding these buildings and giving them access to the security cameras. So he's actually calling these scammers back and using their real names and getting footage of them, having their real names used back to them. It's very fun to watch, and it's kind of nice to see the scammers get scammed a little bit. They're not losing money. They release cockroaches and rats into the building. It's all for fun, but it's also a useful tool because you get to hear firsthand the different tactics these people are trying on the phone, right? So we get to laugh and we get to learn, and we get to see scammers mess with, which was never a bad thing. So I can give you those if you reach out or you talk to me afterwards. So finally, this is like the most important part and the most fun part. Do you guys have anything to share with me? Or stories, as I say, questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas, or stories?
I do. I think I mentioned when I came in, I'm taking the Anacortes Senior College class,
Yeah.
preventing senior fraud, which has been quite the eye opener and come to the time to lose some sleep. thinking.
Sure.
But our teacher, who's manager of one of the banks in town, is talking about like skimmers.
Oh,
I don't know if you need
physical
to
card
address that with
skimmers.
everybody.
Yeah, like I said, there's all kinds of stuff that we can do that we can talk about that, you know, we could spend 5 hours here. By skimmers, I assume you mean like the ATMs that aren't
Right.
real
Or
ATMs.
Safeway gas station.
Yeah.
Apparently that's.
Yeah, the same, I forget where it was in town, but there was one here that we actually had in the office that was, it's just a thing that looks just like an ATM, and they put it on the front of the ATM so that they can get your information. So, in my experience, the best way to combat that, like I said, is to keep an eye on your transactions. I mean, I don't know, are you gonna walk up to every ATM that you use or gas station kiosk that you use and try to break off the front of it to make sure it's
So, but she suggested that you take your fingers and you just go around, if the green light is not flashing at your
Yeah.
ATM, chances are it's a scammer.
You can test it. If you see something that's not right, you know, at the ATMs at my old bank, I haven't actually used the ATM here in town at my new bank, but the ATMs at my old bank always had a little card slot that was glowing. And if that's not glowing, right, that's just a little tip that it might be fake.
Yeah.
And like I said, don't like try to rip it off.
No.
If you test it a little bit, check it, that goes for gas stations too. It happens a lot at gas stations. I saw someone in Eastern Washington one time when I was in college, I saw someone actually find one, like over at another gas station. I was really worried for a minute that I had gotten scammed, but it wasn't. So that's a big thing. It's, again, that's a physical thing. That's literally putting your card in something that looks legitimate and like copying your information and then you're still, you know, putting your card into that machine, right? You're still getting gas. So that transaction is still showing up. So just be vigilant, watch out. It's not always gonna be easy to spot, but just remember that they're out there.
So, we here in Anacortes are very fortunate to have someone like Brent and the capacity, the willingness, the time to do this. I cannot tell you how many people I've spoken to, because one of our common things is, you know, we're police, FTC, FBI. And so, well, I talked to the police and they can't do anything. These guys have been doing a pretty damn good job. And we need to recognize that that is a good thing.
And like I said, it's easy to, I think people probably get frustrated sometimes when you don't get all your money back, right? It's hard, but I can tell you that we investigate the stuff that's called into us and we send it on to whoever it needs to be sent on to, even if it's just giving you a case number, right?
And that's rare.
Yeah, just to point out, you know, not everything is directed to people personally. If you're involved with a business or a club or a nonprofit, there's scams targeted at those sorts of things. I regularly get emails from somebody offering that for $200 to file the annual report with the Secretary of State for an organization. Well, it doesn't cost anything to file that report itself, and it's only a one-page thing, but so I have no idea what happens when you click on the link, because I've never done that.
Oh, I bet I've had things like that before where it's totally legit. They'll file the report for you.
Oh, okay, well,
But
Yeah.
I always call those gray area scams.
yeah,
Like, you know,
or I
you
got,
can download a spyware blocker on your computer that ends up being worse than the spyware, right? You can ask for it and stuff, it pops up all the time, that happens. It's the same deal, I forget what it was, there was something else like that where it was, it was for our drone program at the PD, we had to file our stuff with the FAA before we could fly the drone. And there's a lot of websites that will let you pay $200, $300 to file the stuff.
okay,
Well, if you go on the FAA website, it costs $5. But there are these places that are like, well, we'll give you a laminated card.
Right.
They'll give you a certificate that's framed to go with it. And it's like, that's not legal. That's just, you know.
yeah,
They'll give,
There are things, yeah,
it
they're
says
out
like
there.
FAA certificate.com, like, you don't have FAA's in the name. It's not illegal, but I still consider it a scam. It's, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
You said earlier that if we initiate the transaction or whatever, that we're safe, but I
initiated on the computer one day. And it turned out he was, and he was, scanning me. So how come you use it?
I mean, at the end of the day, you can, it's a pretty safe bet if you initiate it yourself. There's no guarantee that the number that you call is gonna be a legitimate number. I always tell people, make sure that the website that you're getting it from is legit. Sometimes there are bad actors and companies that do the same thing. I mean, like I said, it's kind of the Wild West out there sometimes when you'll be calling the number. There's not a ton of ways to know if the number that you called or the place that you went to is legit. There are technological ways that you can look at those things.
Yeah, well, I thought it was because I was trying to download maps on my Garmin
Yeah,
and, it came up with, and they had all my information because I'd been on there before.
mhm,
And it came up with that they had to call me.
sure.
And I thought, well, you know, it's old, it's 15, 16 years old, maybe they have to. And the more, I mean, he was really nice, he kept talking. But then I thought, this is creepy.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it comes down to your own intuition when you're talking to people,
Yeah,
you know?
I stopped it, I mean, he was in my computer.
Sure.
They came out and said that we couldn't continue, and
You cut off his access or something, or something.
no, I didn't at first, and he said I needed a firewall. I didn't have a firewall, and I
What a
thought,
fancy word.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But Doug, a compliment and does everything.
Sure.
For me, and I thought if he didn't put one on, I didn't need it.
Yeah.
And that's what triggered for me. And so I asked him how much it would cost. And he told me 3 different levels.
Sure.
And so I told him, no, my budget doesn't allow that right now. And I cut him off.
So where was it through? Where did you get the number from? Just out of curiosity.
No, I went on to Garmin.
Yeah.
Which I've done before to download maps.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to look at that because that's interesting. Just
Well,
Garmin.com.
I had it, I can't remember.
Yeah,
but-
I'll Google it because I'm curious
Yeah,
about.
because Doug. Talked to it. I
Common
think-
Matter is a good resource here in town. You guys ever have computer questions?
Yeah.
A lot of people bring their computers in there and just have them completely wiped after they've been scanned. It's not a bad thing to do. You get to kind of start fresh.
Oh, just any question.
Yep,
And he knows that, like, I don't know what I'm talking about.
sure. Same, probably. If I was calling about very technical things, I mean, it's a good idea to just get a second opinion. Right? Melissa?
Multiple things.
Yeah,
First of all, I'd like to say, trust your gut.
yeah,
If you're on the phone with something and you feel like it's odd, it probably is. Second, story. About 3 years ago, I took a trip down to, Gig Harbor, and of course you have to go through a toll bridge at that place, and you can either walk to the side and pay the cash or just drive through and they'll bill you. So I get a text the other day, and it says, Washington Toll Services. We've noticed an outstanding balance of $11.69. Odd, nothing charged. Could you imagine going through a toll booth, but wait, I have 69 cents here.
Yeah.
On your record, to prevent a late fee of $50, please visit, and it gives this, site number. Yeah, to settle your invoice. So I first called, the Washington State.gov stuff. And they said they don't send out anything about the toll system unless it says good to go. Because that's what the toll system is here, is it's the good to go. If it doesn't have good to go on it, it's not from them. So I didn't open it, didn't call them back, and didn't report it. So I'll give this to you. This is from the FTC.
sure.
Because I did call them eventually. I tried the IC 9 whatever, and took forever to get through there. Didn't have the patience for it. So, went ahead and called the we got on FTC, and, much easier program to go through on them.
This is what ends up happening to me with these situations is you mentioned that and I have so many questions because it's like, well, you took the bridge, right? You actually drove over the toll bridge?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Right. So that means you've taken it, right? Did you say?
I was gonna say, we got the exact same text.
Yeah.
Have not been over any toll bridge,
Uh,
So I deleted it and reported it as junk. That gives you that option. My question is, if you report it as junk,
Where does it go?
where does it go? Who does it report
So,
to and what?
my-
I did that too.
I got there.
My like dream thing is that my email would take all the junk mail and then prevent
This was a
future
text.
email or, yeah, you
Yeah.
can report text as well, but I'm gonna report the text as junk, I guess, but
Oh.
in my email inbox, I always hit spam and I would love to think that my email inbox is taking those spam messages and like putting them on the do not spam list or something, but I still continue receiving. It's a neat idea.
Well, at least when you block a call, you know it's blocked.
Yeah.
Conceivably, because I have a gazillion numbers.
Right.
But when I reported as junk, I was kind of wondering, okay, let's
Yeah.
keep track of that.
Sometimes it doesn't like it.
I imagine somebody is, but I don't know what actions they're taking. My assumption is there's some sort of algorithm or AI that sort of scans it and maybe.
Some else, but just keeping track.
I would add a couple things to what you can do to protect yourself. And I think most of you figured out or heard or read or learned tonight that, once your money's gone on this stuff, I'm sorry, the chances of getting any of it back are slim and next to none. But going forward, you can protect yourself with the stuff that Brent was talking about. I would add to that, number one, and you've heard it a million times, you should check your credit report regularly. Annualcreditreport.com, legitimate website, it's free. You're gonna have to answer a whole bunch of questions about you and your social security and your address and stuff, which can be a little scary. But they know that information, they're trying to prevent scammers from getting in and doing anything, so check your credit report to make sure that there's not a credit card out there that you don't know about, or a loan that's not out there, and if somebody calls you and says you've got a credit card out there or a loan, you can use that to verify, that it's true or not. Verify, if there's one thing to take away from this, and Brad, you're all over this, verify. That's the only thing you need to know. Secondly, you can put a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. You can actually do a fraud alert or a freeze. Most of the time, a fraud alert will be adequate. You only have to contact one of the credit bureaus. Easier done online. You can do it by phone, but you'll wait forever. Again, they're gonna want to know a lot of information to verify that it's you. But a fraud alert is a notice on your credit report, so if anybody tries to open a credit card, get a loan, that sort of thing, they'll be told there's a fraud alert and they need to call you to authorize it. So they'll protect stuff in the future. You can do a freeze, which means nothing will ever happen, but the fraud alert generally, in my experience, is good enough to protect most people.
One other thing to mention, and this is something I always forget to do, but when you move, try to remember to update everyone's, all your different accounts with your new address. My PayPal address is still our address from West Fifth, which is years and years ago. I mean, it's easy to forget, and when credit cards ask for your billing address, I think most of the time they don't really care, because a lot of it's done through paperless billing anyway, so there's nothing being sent to you, but in some cases, they are being sent to you, and they're being sent to a previous address. We actually get a lot of stuff from the person or to the person who used to have our PO box. And it's just because you probably had it for years, and then that's the address on file with a lot of companies and a lot of places that send ads, and I don't ever open it, but his personal information is probably somewhere in there, right? So try to remember, it's hard to do, especially when you have so many accounts sometimes, but moving sucks, and that's one of the reasons why, right? Yeah.
Postage stamps on Facebook. Did you know about that one? Where they tried to
Postage stamps?
postage stamps on the holidays, and they have Christmas postage stamps, and you get a lot of them for a small fraction of the price that the post office would charge. Have anybody seen that one?
Yes.
Yeah, and I fell for it, but then I went straight, I realized what I did right after I did it, and I went to my bank. And I had to put a stop on the payments.
Yeah.
But then I got another email, from them wanting to deliver the stamps to my address. But that they needed my information, some bunch of information and so much more, a little bit more money.
Yeah, gotta
And of
cover
course,
the
that's-
extra shipping costs if you live on the move.
And so I went to I went and I actually did get those stamps, but I didn't pay for them because I stopped. I went to the post office and I showed the postmaster these stamps. And he says, oh yeah, they're fake. Oh,
They said
fake, fake stamps.
It's crazy that they actually follow through with it. Like,
Yeah.
because whether you realize they're fake when you get them or you try to use them on your letters, like you're gonna realize it eventually, right?
So it's like Christmas cards did not get through.
It's just funny they have that level of follow through where it's like, well, we're gonna send you the stamps, they're just gonna be fake. Right? Yeah.
Several things. One, some of these things seem like they stay around for a long time. Like I get scam calls, I'm assuming there's scam calls from the police auxiliary for charity donations.
Yeah.
I get them regularly. Even though I have for several years. Everyone are with AI. Some of those blatant deep fakes on all the people that have that are major movers in different blockchain currencies. Many of them are pretty legitimate people, and they're just absolute dead on. And those have been coming up on YouTube, gosh, I think for 6 months now, with maybe half a dozen of the major cryptocurrency celebrities for, boosting your whatever altcoin you have, etc. They're there, they just keep coming up, and then Google, they can't get those things out of there. I guess my question is, what government agency rides herd on this stuff? Because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, I'm hearing. These
Yeah.
scams. Who does oversee, is it the Justice Department or?
I would imagine it's the FTC. Dan, do you know the answer to which?
You see, there's a number of government agencies. It's really frustrating that they're unable to shut these things down, track them down, or whatever. I mean, the best thing that we've got going now is education and passing the word. Because with the technology, with the overseas, with the lack of budgets and staff and law enforcement, and quite honestly, I lost $1,000 because I sent gift cards to somebody. I don't mean to be insulting, that's chump change. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being lost by major corporations in healthcare and hospital, the ransomware. We as consumers giving our $1,000 to a scammer, it gets to be a data point. But they're unable to do anything about it.
And the cynical part of me says that maybe they're not unable to do anything about it, but I mean, it's Google, like, they do a lot of things. It would be nice if they would crack down on it. Obviously, there's some difficulty with tamping down on it, but I'm not sure why they can't prevent that kind of stuff. They have all the technology in the world. They're some of the most advanced companies ever, and their services are, I play a lot of PlayStation games, and a lot of the games that you can buy on their own website, on their own store, are fake. They're not, it's like a thing where you push a button a couple times and you get a trophy or whatever, and that's their storefront, right? And for some reason, it doesn't behoove them to take anything off of it when it's their own customers who are getting scammed and defrauded of this stuff. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I would think that as a big company like that, you would want to make sure that the stuff on your website is legit, right? And some places do things here and there. I see things posted on Facebook all the time, and you'll read news releases sometimes about it, but obviously it hasn't stopped the flow of these things. So the best thing we can do is be vigilant about it, and make sure we don't get scammed ourselves. Melissa?
Quick question.
Yeah.
So in a case like this text thing that we got about the toll booth, should we still, even though we've taken care of it ourselves, should we still report it to the police?
Yeah, I would. I mean,
Of
it's
course you would.
I don't know that, I mean, it's just getting the information out there. if anything, I can read about it and put it in the police blotter. I write that every week. You know, I like to do fraud stuff in there because
Everybody reads it.
everybody reads it and it's stuff that we may all be faced with. I mean, we may not all be in these crazier calls that we get in the blotter, but we're all gonna get a scam call at some point. So that's kind of the cautionary tale side of the police blotter. And I put in as many frauds as I can because you might get the same phone call the next day, right? Anybody else have a question or a story or a comment or a?
One last one, a follow-up and on that.
Yeah.
Some of these calls have, become pretty threatening. We had, calls where we've been with older extended family members where they've said, that they're monitoring that couple.
Yeah.
I can remember going to the airport with one of those couples, we had to leave. And I kept looking out the back window of the car, and then I felt guilty leaving because I had the feeling that, that they were being monitored and on the way home, something happened to them. And on another occasion, and it happened to be the Sierra Club, it was right after we had taken an AARP, update on scamming. This was quite a while ago, before the pandemic. And just right after taking that, we learned of several scams. And one, we were allowed to check a lot of different charities, et cetera, and Sierra Club was one of them. And so they, right away, we got these calls and they just seemed fishy. And I said, no, I don't think so. And they said, what don't you think? And I just said, well, frankly, we just discussed this in a seminar, and then, because I wanted to think if it was the Sierra Club, I wanted to at least give them feedback, because I'd like them to know that they seem pretty questionable. At which point, the person became crescendoing in his assertiveness and then his aggressiveness and his outright hostility, where he was saying, listen, he goes, we're gonna send you a rope, and there'll be instructions for how you can use it. You know, I basically went on to the point that it was for me to use the rope to hang myself.
Yeah.
And then if I was uncomfortable with that, they knew where I lived and they would have someone come out to assist me with that. And so this magnanimous discussion of this wonderful organization and saying.
The Sierra Club's updated their tactics. It's funny because you got that scammer to the point in his script where he was like, tell him to hang himself. Yeah, I mean, you know, with the YouTube channel you talked about earlier, I mean, they get really, really mad when people decide not to give them money.
Yeah.
And it's consequence free relatively, right? You're overseas often, you're in a call center, people aren't gonna get to you, but people get really mean when they didn't get their money.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
Amazing, I put to that crescendo that a couple of occasions.
Well, I just thought, when you brought up the Microsoft thing, about 10 years ago, I had that happen to me where, and it just happened that like on a Saturday morning, I was on my computer, and I can't remember what it was, but I had some problem with our Microsoft account on there.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the phone rings, and this guy said, hey, we're from Microsoft. I go, oh, that's it. Check it out. Yeah, and I think I got trouble on the computer. But anyway, he went to they got on our computer, and they had to scan, check things out and all this stuff. And it went on for quite a while and stuff. And then, and I think, well, this takes a long time for this guy to get whatever he needs. And then eventually it got down to where they wanted me to go down to Safeway. He asked me where's the closest store and stuff, and he said, okay, well, we should go get some gift cards down here, pay for this kind of thing. I go, okay, forget it. Shut the whole thing down at that point and stuff. But I mean, if it hadn't been that I had a problem with my Microsoft account right then as well, the phone calls.
Which is probably just happenstance.
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean.
They were just hacked into your computer,
Yeah.
but, yeah.
The other thing I get, it's, and maybe this is I get legitimate people I know email and where they're sending pictures, hey, we've got these photos to look at. I never opened them, I figured they're probably porn or something,
Yeah,
but,
they're probably just links to.
but
something
how,
that's gonna take your
it's
stuff,
interesting to me, they're friends of mine, I know them, who they are, but, and I contacted them, they thought, I didn't say anything.
Yep.
So,
Their
yeah.
email probably got taken over or.
Yeah.
Email, sent something out that.
I'm gonna tell you, it's time for you to wrap it up.
We're wrapping it up. If you guys have anything else to say, Dan, do you have one more thing?
Thank you, man.
Sure.
Yeah.
Business cards, you can chat with me afterwards if you want, I'll be outside, we can chat some more. I'll do more of these and maybe do a Facebook one, or let me know if you're interested in any specific topics. Yeah, I will. It'll be fun, very simple.
I figured he would know by these days.